Why is healing so important for everyone at all times to be on that journey? And how do we heal trauma, when it's invisible?
All right, going in with the big stuff. So, and it's all big stuff here.
Yeah.
And we're ready to go there. You and I have been talking about our own traumatic experiences. And in fact, I want to acknowledge that the first time I really spoke publicly about remembering my own childhood trauma was with you.
Yeah.
Because you made me feel safe enough to do it.
Yeah.
Where do I begin? So we run from these impermissible feelings from our past. Mm-hmm. These are emotional disturbances from our childhood, traumatic events, trauma with a big T, trauma with a small t. A big T trauma is being sexually abused as a child, having some kind of violence, living through a catastrophic event, growing up in an alcoholic home. A small T trauma is being bullied.
Yeah.
Small T trauma is being told you're stupid by a teacher. Mm-hmm. Small T trauma could be living and surviving COVID. Mm-hmm. We've all lived through trauma way before COVID. Right. It's just now more present for us. But the traumatic events from our past are the ones that are so impermissible because inside those experiences, particularly childhood developmental experiences, is the shame, the impermissible rage, the feelings of inadequacy and feelings of being unlovable. And so we build up all these different protection mechanisms around us to avoid ever having to face those impermissible wounds. Mm-hmm. And those protections could be achievement. They could look good on the outside. That's the scary thing, right? So workaholism can be really praised at times.
Yeah.
It can look like alcoholism, it can look like drug addiction, and we just create all these forms of protection around ourselves to never have to go there. But what's happened recently is in COVID and when we've been struck with feelings of not being safe, feelings of being out of control, a lot of our typical coping mechanisms won't work anymore.
What are typical coping mechanisms for most people?
Typical coping mechanisms: heading to the fridge, overeating, overworking, not working, like numbing out, vegging out, the sofa, a coping mechanism. And I refer to coping mechanisms as protector parts. I am now trained in internal family systems therapy. And so in IFS, we talk about these protectors. And what are they protecting us from? Those exiled child parts, those impermissible parts that we don't want to ever touch, don't want to go into.
Protectors are the coping mechanisms. The addictive or non-healthy coping mechanisms.
Correct.
Let me hear you say.
Yeah.
Those are called protectors.
Totally. Exactly.
The things that we don't want to go and face. The pain, the
and
shame.
Sometimes we don't even know that they're a problem.
Right.
Like a workaholic may not yet know that that's a problem for them, or codependency. So they're constantly protecting themselves by finding relationship. Or for me, there was the controller. You were in studio with the controller many times, and you also even went as far as to like almost pick up on that at early in our relationship, where you're like, it could be a little easier. You noticed it for me. And and I have one that's called Knives Out. She's not out anymore, but she was like this, like, like if you with me, you with death row, like I am done.
So were those your two main coping mechanisms, I guess?
Well, there was my 25-year-old cocaine addict. And then there was the, another interesting protector part is even spirituality at times, because while it's a beautiful practice to be on a spiritual quest, and it's what I've been writing about for over a decade, we can at times use our spiritual practice to get above the pain. And so
give me an example.
You're newly sober and you're like in every meditation class and you're doing, your Kundalini yoga, and you're getting high on your own supply, right?
Yes.
Which is excellent. It's much better than drinking. And it's a beautiful pursuit, but it's also another form of protecting what is deeper. And frankly, that spiritual bypassing, as we would call it, is actually a tremendous gift at times because it's too painful to go to those places.
Yes.
So if spirituality is what you've got, that's way better than the drugs and the alcohol, right?
But you're still masking.
But it's still another way of masking. It's still another way of getting above what is so uncomfortable to face below.
What were the 2 or 3 biggest things that you weren't willing to face for so long?
So
for the reasons why you had these,
I didn't even know what they were. I got clean and sober at 25 and became extremely fascinated by my spiritual practice and became a spiritual teacher and started writing books on spirituality and personal growth. And then all the while was writing books and on Oprah and, you know, friends with guys like you and, you know, doing moving my career forward and helping a lot of people and losing it on the inside, just cracking on the inside. And by the time I was 36 years old, this is about probably maybe 6 months before that interview I referenced between you and I was just completely overwhelmed with my reality that I had created.
What reality?
The extreme control.
Oh, okay.
So I had authored maybe 6 or 7 books. I'd had all this busyness happening. And you remember, I had no team. I had like one virtual assistant running this like business that could have had 20 people at the time. And so I just kept just pushing. And all because I was trying to control. I was trying to stay safe. I was trying to stay safe from feelings that I didn't want to feel, but I didn't know that. So I kept looking back saying, why was I a drug addict? Why am I such a workaholic? Why am I codependent? Why? Until I was 36.
Interesting.
And had a dream. And in the dream, I remembered I was an adult addressing that I had been sexually abused as a child.
In the dream?
Yes. And I woke up and I was like, no way, never talking about that again. I had a talk that night. I was like, no, get down.
Wow.
And a few days later, I was in therapy and my therapist was asking me a few leading questions. And one thing that she said in particular just catapulted me into the memory, and not visual or details, but just the acceptance that this indeed did happen to me. And so it turns out that for over 30 years, I dissociated from a childhood memory because it was so extreme. And I ran from it in all the same ways that we run from trauma, with the workaholism, the cocaine addiction, the love addiction, all of it.
What's the root of the shame? Or what's the root of hiding or overworking or controlling? Is it shame that I'm not enough, or that it's just too hard to face this pain, or that if people knew this about me, no one would love me? What's the core fear that a lot of us face when that event occurs?
So I don't think it's necessarily a logical fear that we have in our conscious awareness. It's a sense. It's a underbelly. And the more personal growth work we do, we can see, oh, okay, you know, I worked so hard to be seen, or, you know, you can start to see the map. But when we're in it, it's really hard to recognize. Yeah. So much so that in the book I write this chapter about shame. And I tell this whole story about how I'm in this training where I'm teaching, but I'm also with 2 other teachers. So when the other teachers were leading the workshop, I was in the audience, just like, oh, let me hook up my friends. I'll sit and listen. Yeah, check it out. Like the whole workshop is on shame. And I'm thinking, I don't have any shame. 36 years old, you know.
I'm succeeding. I'm driven. I'm this.
It's such a, it's the most difficult emotion to face. And being in that room, that one exercise, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been running from. This is what I've been hiding from. This is, you know, a decade into my sobriety, and I'm just touching into this now.
Wow. What was the exercise?
I think it was about like witnessing how you respond to things and
being aware of like how you react.
Becoming conscious of what it feels like.
If someone is a triggered human being in life, maybe not every day, but something happens and it triggers them. What is that saying about the person? That they haven't healed something that's allowing the trigger, that those events have power over them, that they're, you know, they have negative coping mechanisms. What is that reactiveness or shutdownness and not standing up for yourself, or whatever it is that people do? an unhealthy reaction, let's say?
So the trigger, I'm going to speak to this in IFS language. So Internal Family Systems was founded by my new friend, Dick Schwartz, and it's just the most beautiful therapy.
Internal Family
Systems, yeah. And I now did the level 1 training. I'm going to carry on and continue training in this. It's the most incredible practice I've ever used. And I've been in that type of therapy for a decade. And then I most recently got it under my belt. And so what it is, and I could do some with you too today, what it is the premise that we have these exiled child parts, that the young boy who was sexually abused, the little girl who was sexually abused, or just the kid that was bullied, or the kid, I don't want to just say just, because people are committing suicide over this, but or the being told you're not good enough or whatnot, or just a little bit of neglect or whatever it is. Those experiences from our childhood just get so pushed away, locked under lock and key, never to be spoken of again. Then the protectors show up. And from a very young age.
Protectors meaning coping mechanisms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And anytime, and the protectors actually have 2 different forms. There's managers, which are just sort of like, workaholic, like working. And then there's these firefighter protector parts that are like, F this, cannot go any further. I am going right for the drink, or I got to go right for the fridge, or just the addiction, the addictive parts, right? So those are all known as protectors. When we get triggered, when there's a moment where that child part gets activated, your father just passed. There's probably a lot of triggers that came up around that. Without any deep awareness of our system, our internal system, will get activated. The young part might get activated because we feel out of control. We feel unsafe. Something activates that part. When that feeling starts to creep in, the protector comes right in. The protector's like, gonna work, gonna eat, gonna run.
The reaction.
The reaction. You're gonna control, gonna, whatever it might be.
Scream, whatever.
Rage,
fight,
blame, judge, self-attack, attack others, binge on television. Anything that part can do to anesthetize the voice of that, or the presence, even this tinge of feeling sensation of that exiled child part. And then the beautiful good news is, we all have what's known as self. And for years as a spiritual teacher, I would have called this higher self or God or universe. And in this case, I would call it self with a capital S. And self is the compassionate, calm, courageous, curious, creative part of who we are that has always been there. It's the truth of who we are. It's the soul of who we are. And it's a non-physical energy that is us.
Yeah.
And when we learn to connect to that self energy and let that self energy relate to and support the protectors, then our entire system can relax. So we could demo that today if you want to.
Are you talking about like being able to step outside of the emotional reactive self and saying, okay, kind of let me coach myself.
Correct.
From a higher
Yes, very much so. Good listening, man. So you're such an active listener. So it's becoming your own internal parent and letting self be the leader of your internal family system.
Your highest version of yourself.
Correct.
Your kind,
exactly.
loving, compassionate.
The compassionate, courageous, curious part becomes the internal parent to all these other little parts.
Yeah.
So it's the internal family system.
In yourself,
That's
internal,
correct.
not your family.
It has
system.
Nothing to do with your family.
Yourself,
your own
when you were
family.
5, when you were 10, when you were 16, and when you were 30. And
your protectors, your exiles,
everything
all the parts.
messiness of your
so
internal
you,
family.
Lewis, are not just Lewis. You are Lewis, the athlete. You're Lewis, the hard worker. You're Lewis, the child who was abused. You're Lewis, the guy who lost his dad.
Right.
But it's not just these characteristics. It's the personality traits, these different personalities of who you are. So who are some of your protectors?
Personalities, right?
Tell me who. Yeah, exactly. Multiples.
So who are the protectors?
How do you protect yourself when you get triggered? What are some of the ways that you sweep in?
I mean, I feel like I've done it's funny because I was telling my girlfriend Martha this when we first started dating. I said, I'm going to be 100% who I am. I'm not going to change for you or anyone. I'm going to change for me in the ways I want to improve and grow at the right timings of my life. And I go, there's only one thing. Like, you can do anything and it will not upset me.
Yeah.
You can talk to 20 hot guys who are shirtless. I could care less.
Okay.
You can be, because she's an actress, I'm like, you can make out with a guy on a TV set. for film, for art, it's not going to affect me. You can, whatever, I could care less. But I was like, there's one thing that may trigger me. Not all the time, but it might trigger me. And are you okay with accepting this about me? It's only happened twice. It actually happened like a few days ago. It's only happened twice in like 9 months. But I was like, listen, this is going to happen potentially.
What is it?
It's not even really that big. It's not like I'm super reactive or something. But sometimes I would say I've improved a lot on this. But in the past, I felt like my word, when I would say something, certain people in the past in intimate relationships would not take my word when I just say, here's the truth.
Oh, so you're trusting you.
They wouldn't listen to me or trust me. And then when they would keep reacting to something that was made up or imagination that wasn't happening in an event or experience. And I was like, no, this is what happened. No, this is what happened. No. So I'd have to repeat myself over and over again to make sure that someone was listening or someone was hearing, because it wasn't.
So when that happened, when you didn't feel...
Like someone would create a false story about something happening.
Okay.
And they were believing so firmly that was the truth. And I'm just like, that's not the truth. Don't attack me. You know
what's your response in those moments?
My response is originally, like, no, this is the truth. But then if it is not believed, then I kind of go in a loop of like saying it over and over again. Okay. Even if someone then, like Martha is now like, okay, I believe you. But then I'll like keep repeating it.
So proving yourself or how?
It's just like,
let's just
if
check
someone doesn't feel like, I don't know if it's proving myself. It's just feeling respected for my word. Like, this is the truth. This is how I'm feeling. And making sure that, it's respected and honored is really what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do I have some buy-in to check in with that part of you?
Sure. You can
okay.
Anything, yeah.
So when that happens and gets activated, what are you feeling in your system? Or what do you notice?
It doesn't happen right away. It's more like if I feel like after 10, 20, 30 minutes, like it's not landing with the person, then I feel like, I need to protect myself.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I kind of loop sometimes. It's only happened twice in the last year, but I'm just...
What's the loop? How would you define the loop?
It's to protect myself from someone not believing me. I guess. Yeah.
So,
that's my perception. They might already believe me.
If you had to define how you is it? Are you trying to prove yourself? Or are you trying to, is there a specific name of this reaction?
I'm not sure in this moment what that would be, but it's I guess proving myself. I don't know if it's proving myself. It's more like I just don't feel like, my word is honored or something.
Okay.
I guess, yeah. So I don't want someone to think I'm out of integrity.
Okay. And so what do you notice about that part in your body, in your mind? Is there an image? Maybe even close your eyes if you want to, but just, is there imagery or a sensation physically in your body?
It doesn't, if I think about it from the past, because I don't feel like much of a physical reaction now, but in the past, I think I did, where it feel like tension in the heart and like closed throat.
Okay.
It felt like.
Okay.
But I feel like I've done a lot of the integrating healing work where I don't feel that. It's more just kind of like a habit still.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it's just still coming up.
It's less physical and like stressful. It's more like mental now. So it's just being aware of it. And I'm even like, I was even telling you the other night, I was like, I'm aware I'm doing this now. But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing it. Like, I'm aware in this moment that I'm in a loop in this moment.
Well, let's help that part.
Yeah.
Let's help that part. Okay, so anything else that the part wants to reveal about, does it have a gender?
I'm not sure if it does or not, but it's probably just like a scared little boy,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the scared little boy.
Probably, yeah.
Beautiful. And is there anything that he wants us to know before we keep going? Is there anything that he wants to say out loud?
He just wants to feel loved and safe and protected and trusted.
Yeah.
I never felt like people believed me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, well, why tell the truth if no one's going to believe me? So I might as well just do whatever I want, type of thing.
Right.
And I broke that pattern eventually. I think I got,
How do you feel towards him?
I feel very loving and compassionate towards him.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Does he know that you are here, that you're adult, resourced, undamaged self? He knows you're here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I practice it like daily, you know, the integration of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What might he need from you in those moments when the loop is up for him?
Just a pause, like a break.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why I told Martha, I was like, when this happens, if you feel like I'm doing this, just tell me, hey, I'm going to take a pause. And that's what I need, you know?
Right. What does he need?
I think he needs a pause. He needs to breathe. He needs, you know, just to walk and clear his mind and feel safe. Feel like I've got him, you know? Like I'm protecting him. I've got him. You know, we're in this together. That he doesn't have to worry.
How does he feel towards you?
I mean, he feels pretty safe. Yeah.
He does feel safe with you.
Yeah, of course.
He loves you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
I
nice.
mean, I think he's like, wow, you're doing all the emotional work that I wish I could have had the skills or the tools, the ability from a, you know, childhood brain development stage that I didn't have those skills. It's like, okay, you're doing the work for me. So I trust we're going to be okay.
Now, if you could, so he wants to go for a walk when he's activated, right?
Yeah.
Where would you guys walk?
Just around the block. It's fine.
Around the block?
Yeah,
Okay.
Just a one time around the block, or just sit in some grass and just breathe and look up at a tree.
Can you just take a moment to talk a little bit more about where you might want to take him, like a safe place that he could go with you?
Well, we just moved into a new place, so I don't know the surroundings of
Okay.
the parks, but I would just go around the block in a quiet neighborhood. And just, you know, see the dogs walking by with their owners, and yeah, just it's peaceful.
How close is he to you when you're walking?
He's inside of me. He's connected.
He's in you. Okay, he's walking with
it's
you.
not like next. I'm not like holding his hand. He's like within me.
Oh, beautiful. And is there anything that you want to say to him if you just sort of visualize him in that walk?
I would just say you're safe. You're loved. You have nothing to worry about. You know, even if you feel like someone isn't trusting you or isn't believing you in this moment, I believe in you.
So good. And now, just one last.
It's all. You know, it's not a. And maybe, you know, I'm using the example of my girlfriend. It's not that she didn't believe in me or not, but it's like
What just triggered it?
yeah, it's just like a. And maybe she did believe in me, but I just felt like she's not going to if I don't do this or something. And so it's more of a
100%.
perceived
Yeah.
feeling than a actual truth.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes or not. Yeah.
So now we have this process of retrieval where when you notice that he's there, instead of getting in the loop, as you referred to, which it literally is a neural loop, what if you could take him for a walk?
Yeah. That's literally, it's all the last was like, I might just need a pause. You know, we just go take a pause.
That's
and just
right.
Take a walk.
That's right.
Nothing against this conversation. Just,
You could literally take him for a walk.
Yeah.
You could visualize taking him for a walk.
yeah. And I do other exercises with the little Lewis inside of me. And, you know, I showed you on my phone. I still have a photo of my 5 or 6 year old self. And so I do practices on a daily basis where I'm just like, I got you. We're in
You
this
clearly
together.
do.
I do it all the time.
Because what you have. Okay, so let me tell you what you've got going on,
Okay,
man.
go
You're such a testament to your listeners and viewers of someone who has done such deep transformational work. It's so profound. It almost made me cry.
Thanks.
You have a direct line of access from self energy, the compassion, courageous, caring, undamaged adult part of you.
Right.
Has a direct line of access to him, to the little boy. Now, listen, not everybody can even go to the little boy because the little boy was an exiled part.
Right.
Okay.
For a long time.
And
25
I
years.
was just trying to talk. Remember, I kept trying to be like, well, what is it? Is it protection? And it's like, no, you went right to him.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you've already done so much work in your therapy of retrieving him, bringing him into your workouts, bringing him into your phone, all these things. And so he's very intertwined and he's very much so, has direct access to you and to self, and self has direct access to him. But in those
Capital self.
that's right, and that's why we're so easy to get there. But there's still more work to do. The triggers are going to be, so there's still a trigger that you even were so aware of that you brought it to her from the get-go. And that trigger, when it gets activated, gets into a protector part, which is,
like defending myself.
Defensive. That was I didn't want to say it for you, but that's the word. So defensive. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense because it's likely you were not believed as a child.
Right. Yeah.
And that is a horrific experience, thing.
Which, I mean, there's so much emotions around it because it's like, you know, a lot of it's all parental stuff, right? Parents and then siblings and then peers, kids and all that stuff. And it's like I was able to process a lot of this healing work in the last 2 weeks when my father died as well, to kind of go back and have conversations with my father. It's like, and witness, and also be grateful for the transformational work. It was kind of when I was 13, he started to transform emotionally to where we had a different relationship. But before then, I didn't feel like I was believed by either him or my parent, either my parents.
Yeah.
Whether it was true or not, that was my perception.
Totally. Yeah.
They may have, but I didn't feel it, right?
So that little boy, while he's had so much work
Yeah.
and so much love and so much care and therapy and so much care from Martha and so much care from adult resource Lewis, has still got some, some unresolved suffering, and it may go even deeper. And so for now, just the next step would just be focus on giving him direct access to self.
Yeah.
Whenever you notice him, get curious.
Yeah.
Oh, little Lewis, what do you need right now, man?
Exactly.
How are you doing? Like, notice what you notice about him and the physical sensations.
Yeah.
Ask him if he's aware of your presence.
That's good.
And then whenever possible, you can remove him from the situation, take him for a walk. When a child is having a moment or a tantrum or feeling really out of control, what we do as conscious parents is we connect and then redirect, as Dan Siegel says. So
connect
and then redirect.
And then redirect.
Yeah.
Not just say, go to your room or something.
Or just be like, I'm going to deal with this and just make Marta believe me. It's actually, hold on, Marta, I'm going to take little Lewis for a walk. And so it's actually unbelievable. She's sitting in the room, everybody. but really it's transformational work.
Yeah.
This is the work that my husband and I do. And it's life-changing. When you can start to see each other as your child parts or in a protector part, then her self-compassion, her capital S compassion can be a direct access for you.
Absolutely. And that's why I told her early on, I go, she's incredible because she just kind of allows me to, she's very peaceful and calm in those moments. She's like extremely spiritually advanced. And so she's able to just like kind of listen and not like make me wrong or judge me and kind of say, I hear you. I'm here for you. I got you. Like
she has a lot of self-energy.
So she calms it down. Even if I might go for a few more minutes, she's like, I hear, I don't know what else to say. I hear you. I've got you. And then I come like, okay, I just need to take a break. And then I can come talk to you again.
That honestly is the most
she's
beautiful
not reactive
gift.
And like saying you are bad or, so it's incredible.
She's in herself. She's sitting in the seat of self when you're activated.
Yeah. She doesn't get triggered.
And it's not always going to be like that. So the most important thing is, and not everybody's going to be a Marta in your life, Luckily, one of the most intimate relationships is her, but there's going to be people at work that may not, or situations where you get, called out online or whatever happens, and you're going to be like, no, they don't believe me. And that's when we want to go right into direct access from self with a capital S right to little Lewis and take him for a walk.
Now, here's the thing. I started a healing journey at 30, not 8.5, 9 years ago, of talking about the biggest shame that I faced, which was the sexual abuse when I was a kid. And that started unlocking a healing journey. As my therapist says, healing is not an event, it's a journey. It doesn't just like, I have this awareness, I feel good now that I released it. It's like a constant integration of exercises and practices. Exactly. About the abuse with, friends, family, therapists, and then opening up publicly. Not that I don't suggest people do it publicly about their shame, but I feel like it was a responsibility for where I was at. I felt like, okay, I can talk about this and it doesn't trigger me, right? But I still hadn't healed things from intimate relationships.
Yeah.
And so the last year was really doing therapy every week.
Yeah.
Integrating the lessons, the healing that I was feeling, the tightness in my chest, my throat from intimacy.
Yeah.
And reconnecting with the little child in that part of my life.
100%.
Not just sexual abuse, but now let's talk about relationships, parent stuff, everything else. And I feel like there's obviously going to be more, that I'm uncovering, every few years probably. But most people, number one, that I've interacted with aren't even aware of their traumas or their shames. Right.
That's correct.
So they're not even aware of that they have a broken bone in their body. or a
They've
broken
been running
organ.
with a broken leg
they're running
for
with a broken
decades.
leg,
Yeah.
and they're not even aware,
Right.
right? They're just taking medicine, or they're masking it, or they have a cast on, or whatever it is. And so I'm constantly doing the practice to be like, what else do I need to be aware of? What else do I need to be aware of? And then I'm holding myself accountable with therapy or friends or, partners or things like that to be like, okay, where are my triggers? How can I keep growing?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to integrate the lessons I learn into a daily practice to heal and hopefully not have any triggers at all. Is the goal, is to be triggerless or reactionless.
Yeah.
And be more responsive, responding. For those that aren't aware of their emotional traumas, and also those who don't have tools in a healthy way to navigate those, what would be the process, would you say? Let's say, give it a framework.
Yeah. It's
for healing trauma. Is it like if you could simplify it, not that you can simplify it, but if it's like there's 4 steps to healing trauma, 3 steps, 1, be aware, 2, because it's really hard to do it on your own.
So I'm going to read you the chapter titles.
Cool.
Okay. Because this is the journey.
Yes.
This is my journey from recovering from trauma. In that process, I share many, many methods and tools that one can use immediately.
Yeah.
And also introduce the therapeutic practices that changed and saved my life.
Right.
And in introducing those practices, I actually give ways that you can do them in real time so that you can say, oh, this was really soothing for me, or I just listened to Gabby do some IFS with Lewis. I want to look further into IFS. But the journey looks to me like this. And then I think we all have our own individual journeys. But my hope in this book and the intention here is to help the reader, 1, know that they're not alone, and 2, know that there is a guided path from trauma to profound freedom and inner peace. There's no way I would put my face on that cover if I couldn't stand behind that.
Right.
Okay. So here we go. So the first chapter 1 is become willing to become free. Willing to become free means you can't even open this book if you don't have a desire
To want to be free. Yeah.
to want to be free, to look more closely, to even just have a mustard seed of hope that there could be a better way.
How does someone start the willingness process?
Well, if they're still listening, they're willing.
Okay, good. Yeah. If you have a curiosity, you're willing.
If you're here, you're willing.
Yeah.
And even if you tuned into this episode, you're willing, because I'm sure there'll be trauma somewhere in the title, or or whatever you decide. But it'll be something that's going to be an acknowledgement. Yeah, there's something in that for me. Many, many, many more people are willing these days than ever before. I think that if I'd written this book 5 years ago, I'd have a half the audience that I have now.
Right.
I mean that. Okay, for this specific content. Chapter 2 is become brave enough to wonder. So in my case, I literally didn't remember and had to be brave enough to wonder what was there. And in other people's cases, they just have to maybe wonder, not that they don't necessarily remember what happened to them, but to wonder what could be behind these triggers. What could be some feelings behind these triggers? What could be? I did a podcast with somebody the other day, and she was like, she's like, my co-host has so much trauma and she's so open about it. And she's like, I have no trauma. Within 5 minutes, we were like the neglectful father and the this and the, like it was just like instant, and everybody's got it. Everybody's got it. So you just have to become brave enough to wonder. And
it might be little t, but it becomes big T over time.
Well, it was interesting. She's like, I guess I just have little t. And then she started to describe her story, and we were both like, that's big T trauma.
Yeah.
So chapter 3 is why we run. So what is it? What is the reason that we're running? Why are we running? And recognizing, okay, we have this trigger, we have a feeling behind it, we have a reaction to it. And then what could it be?
Is it just it's so painful for us to face it? That's why we run most of the time?
That's right.
It's just so hard for us to mentally, emotionally understand
underneath
it?
all of the unresolved traumas, big T, small t, from our past is the belief system that we are unlovable and inadequate. You said beautifully that now little Lewis has big Lewis helping him process this stuff that he wished he'd had when he was little. But when we're young, we don't. And if we don't have a caretaker or a primary caretaker that has a secure attachment to us, helping us in those young moments to feel safe and seen and soothed and secure, as I talk about later, and I'll get into that, then we literally have to rely on the protectors. All those storylines that we build up. The parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The challenge is, I mean, how many parents have tools, are healthy in their own emotional...
So...
It's like, how do you raise a kid who's healthy when so many people are struggling with their own challenges?
Read the book.
Yeah.
I'm so serious, because then we get into, well, if you fast forward to chapter 9, it's about reparenting yourself. But so much of this book is, if you go through this book, you will be a better parent.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I've got a chapter in here about hiding behind the body, that we have impermissible rage locked up in our back pain, in our headaches, in our gastrointestinal issues, in our insomnia, eczema. And I talk about the psychosomatic effects of the mental disturbances that have not been resolved and how they affect the body. And then speaking about shame, and then going even further, and IFS, and all of the somatic work that we can do, and then it carries on. So I take you through, this is the playbook.
Yes.
This is the playbook. And now one thing I'm really cautious of with the reader is not every chapter is going to be right for where someone is right now.
Right.
For you could pick this up and be like, yeah, I could do all of that, or I've done half that, and I'm going to do more. And for Marta, it's the same. It could be somebody on the street could be like, okay, I just have to read this right now and just take it in.
Yeah. I can't even get started.
I got to come back in a year to do the exercises.
Now, okay, so once we're aware, and once we have the willingness, and we're starting to wonder and look at some of these things, and we say, okay, here's 2 things from my past that I haven't been willing to tell friends, partners, husbands, wives, spouses, parents. Like, I've neglected to talk about these things. They're so shameful. I'm so afraid to talk about them. Let's say it's 1 thing, 2 things, whatever. What is the next step? Once you become aware of your trauma and you know there's something you want to heal, is it, well, there's a number of different therapeutic experiences you could go through. Here's a few to try. Is it everyone does it differently? Some people are more introspective and they do journaling prompts. Others need to speak to someone. What are the best ways to heal and really integrate the healing? Because I think it's, again, I don't think it's like I'm aware and I'm healed. It's like you got to integrate the practice. And every time you're triggered, can you breathe and respond differently?
Integration is the word, actually.
It's everything.
It's the word. And well, like I said, everyone's going to resonate with different methods in this book that are appropriate for them at this time. You can trust your own internal system and intuitive force to know what's safe enough for you today. Yeah. You'll feel it in your body. So for me, I wasn't going to be able to do the somatic experiencing, the body-based work, until X period, 2 years ago, because that was when I could feel safe enough in my own body and almost back in my body. Like I would just departed my body and I was like back in my human body.
What somatic experiences? You mean like just body work or physical?
So SE, which is somatic experiencing, I write about in this book, it's invented by Peter Levine, is built on the premise that trauma is the inability to be present. And when we have deep-rooted trauma, yes, it's activated in our thoughts at times, but primarily it's body-based. So we have these triggers that then
Store
send...
to the body. The body keeps the score. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they send these messages, these triggers send a message to the brain that says like fight, flight, freeze. And so what happens as a child is whatever you were unable to do, like in my case, let's say I needed to push someone off of me, that became, when I was not able to complete that, that full blown, so fight, flight, and then it froze, right? So if you freeze in time, you're stuck, that energy gets truncated in your system and you become stuck in the neural loop of fight, flight, and then you get stuck, and then fight, flight, it's stuck, and that repetition. And so the beautiful process of somatic experiencing is about no storyline. It's not about what happened, where were you. It's all about the body and going right into the body, going right into the presence of the body and allowing the body to show you what it needs to do to fully reprocess the experience.
That's powerful.
And so in some cases it's very slow, right? So it could be like if you wanted to punch somebody, it's like a really, really slow movement. And I give and this is body-based work. So the practices that I give in that chapter are also things that you can do right now to start to ground your body. So a heart hold, like putting your right hand on your heart and your left hand on your belly. And actually, interestingly,
hugging yourself.
Try this out. Put your right hand on your heart and your left hand on your belly. How does that feel?
It feels good.
Okay, switch hands. Left hand. Does that feel better or worse?
Different, because I'm used to putting my right hand over my heart.
So not as soothing.
Not as natural.
There you go. Okay. So it's important. I just learned this. I interviewed Dan Siegel and I was doing this and he's like, well, you put the right hand on your heart, but I do the left. And he's like, 70% of people put their right hand on their heart and they feel that safety. And the rest kind of do the left. So you have to check on which side's right for you. Right. But the heart hold or a head hold, these practices are really profound for settling your nervous system. Breathing in for 2 strokes, out 1 long stroke if you're feeling overly anxious and activated. So tapping, EFT, which you've talked about, tapping on the gamut point. So there's a point between your ring finger and your pinky finger. And if you're in that stressed out place and you're getting in the loop, tap, I am safe. And tap and just repeat, I am safe. I am safe. A power pose, like standing like Superman, Superwoman, that can change your nervous system. So these practices are really body-based practices for letting your system settle in the moment. And then, of course, I say in the book, if you want to go further, find a somatic experiencing therapist, and here's how.
Yes.
And all of the methods that I was guided to for my recovery were all spiritual therapeutic practices. I can say this because I'm not in the clinical space, but I believe that they're all extraordinarily spiritual, the specifics. So EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and that's designed, again, to help you reprocess that loop.
So once we figure out which therapeutic experiences are best for us, right? Because it's going to be different for each one of us. What would you say, can we fully heal something?
Yeah.
How long does it take? Is it based on the trauma and how long we've said it's stored? Is there hope for people to say, I don't want to have this trigger for the rest of my life? I want to feel like peaceful.
Well, let me ask you this.
When things happen, I don't want to be reactive.
Let me ask you this. In general, how do you feel?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel good.
Me too.
Yeah, but for 25 years, I felt a lot of inner stress, inner conflict and anger.
So thank you to the 25 years for all that it offered you to get you to where you are now.
Right.
But you feel awesome.
Yeah.
So do I. So while it's been a good, committed, devotional practice, we are living proof that there is a guided path from trauma to profound freedom and inner peace.
Absolutely.
We're living that.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we don't still have triggers. It doesn't mean that there isn't like more of the crystal to shine. It doesn't mean that I still don't go to therapy every single week and sometimes twice a week. But because I want to continue to care for and honor and respect all of the parts of who I am.
Yeah. I mean, I come from the sports background, which and I'm a big fan of having accountability for your goals, right? If I'm talking about a sports background, it's like, and I know I can't do it alone in athletics. So why try to do it alone in my emotional, growth or my mental growth, my spiritual growth? I can go pretty far on my own, but I think it's just good to have the accountability for whatever that looks like for people. I'm not saying they need therapy every week or they need to invest in something, but it's good to have accountability however you find it.
I agree. Yeah.
I think it's really powerful. It's
one of the reasons that the 12-step program works so well. It's because of the fellowship. It's because you have a sponsor. It's because you have meetings. People are looking for you. Where is that person today? Right. Just got a text message from one of my friends who have been sober. We've been sober for 16 years. He's been sober 17 years. And I was the first person I met in AA, and he texted me today and he's like, checking in.
You still good? Yeah.
Checking in.
How long were you in AA for?
I'm still in AA.
Really?
Yes.
So once you started, you never stopped?
Some people stop.
So is that once a month? Is that once a week? What is that?
Well, really depends on who you are and what you need, right? So I go to meetings now. You can go to Zoom meetings. I go to meetings in person sometimes, but mostly Zoom since the pandemic, unfortunately.
Right. Is it hard for people who start AA to not need it anymore? Or you kind of like,
Well, I think that
Can you transcend that, I guess?
You can move into a different type of program. You can move into a different type of therapy. There's plenty of people when they get long-term sobriety that they start to feel less resonant with some of the meetings and things. But it's suggested and I think recommended to stay close to it because you don't want to forget where you came from.
Right.
I think everyone's path is different.
Sure.
I actually share a story in the book about sharing about, I believe, and Gabby Mate would say this, and other folks in this trauma.
I've been watching his stuff. I love his
He's incredible.
stuff.
Yeah.
I got to interview him soon.
Yes, you do.
He looks amazing. Yeah.
What he would say is that, and I agree with this completely, is that trauma is the root cause of addiction.
That's what he says a lot.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Because if you're not, you don't need addiction if you're not traumatized by something, right? If you feel peace inside, why would you need to reach for some coping?
Correct. And we all have trauma, and so we all have reactive ways of acting, but the bigger the trauma, oftentimes the bigger the coping mechanism,
Right.
AKA the firefighter part.
Yes.
And that's an addiction, right? So addiction is a huge way of putting out the fire.
And so the root cause, the root of addiction is trauma or unresolved trauma, it sounds like.
That's correct.
And so if you want to eliminate your addiction, your negative addictions, the key is to figure out where's the trauma and start healing that trauma.
Yeah, that would be the goal. But I noticed in my own, with a lot of sober people in my life, that they all have had similar experiences to myself and to you and big T traumas.
Yes.
And even being clean and sober, it's still terrible. I mean, I was sober 11 years before I was ready to face into my big T trauma.
Interesting. Do you feel like if you would have faced it year 1 or 2, do you think you would have?
I wouldn't have been able to, and I'll explain to you why. So I said to my therapist when I remembered that trauma, why now? Why am I remembering this now? And she said, because you're safe enough to remember. You've been in enough therapy. You have enough spiritual foundation. You're safe enough to remember.
You got a good support group. You've got a good partnership. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's right.
But if he is saying that the root of addiction is trauma, wouldn't we want to start going to the trauma first? But if you're saying if you don't feel safe enough to face it, it may take you time.
That's the point. So I think going to the trauma is so delicate and gentle, and it's like peeling back those layers of the onion. And anyone that's listening right now, still listening, because many people might have just been like, I'm so activated, this is a lot for me. And they'll come back in a half a year or whatever, a year from now and listen again. But the bottom line is that we all have these traumas and we're running from them. And to go headfirst into them would be like ripping off the Band-Aid or just being in the dark and all of a sudden walking into the brightest light you've ever seen, and it would blast you out. And that can happen. It does happen. People do remember when they're not ready to. And even when you are ready, it's terrifying to remember these things or accept things. But it's you have to go slow.
Okay. So what about if someone is suffering? Do you feel like addiction is tied to suffering as well? Like inner suffering. And so if we feel suffering or inner pain, then we reach onto these coping mechanisms that you call protectors.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was in getting my nails done yesterday. They look really cool, right?
Like cool.
So
Yeah,
I was getting my nails done, and I was talking with the nail artist, and she was really lovely. And she's like, I'm like, you're really relaxed. And she's like, yes, the building could be burning and I would be fine. Like I'd be like, okay, let's get out of the building. And then she said to me, the next sentence was, but I'm dying inside.
Wow.
And I said, oh, okay. So that numbed out person is your protector.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's doing a good job. She's keeping you safe right now. And then I handed her a book.
Yeah. So
because I always carry books around during my book lunch. I just recognized that everyone is suffering. Those of us who have had the privilege of going to the places that scare us and coming out the other side and doing the deep work are suffering less because we've been through and continue to work on.
We have tools to get out of it quicker. Yeah.
And we actually have retrained our brains. So neuroplasticity shows that you can literally change your neural pathways. So you and I have the loop. You now are aware of the loop.
Yeah.
5 years ago, you wouldn't even have known the loop was there.
Yeah.
So
don't try to change me. This is
exactly.
Who I am.
So I am. I'm going to prove myself, right? So and defend, but we the more work you do, the more you change your brain and your nervous system and your reactivity and all the ways that you run. And so there's everyone's suffering, some less than others, primarily based on your willingness to go to the places that scare you.
Now, Martha was telling you before we jumped in this about, I was doing pretty much weekly therapy and reconnecting to the inner child and a lot of different stuff. And at the end of the year, my therapist gave me an exercise. Mm-hmm. She said, at the beginning of the year, she said, what is your intention? The first session I did with her.
Love her.
For this session, right? Mm-hmm. And what's your intention from wanting this therapy, this experience, coaching? And I said, I want clarity, peace, and freedom. Mm-hmm. And every time she asked me before our calls, what do you want? I say clarity, peace, and freedom. And at the end of the year, she was like, have you found this? I said, I became this.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't find it. I didn't create it. I became it.
That's exactly right.
I integrated it. I became it.
That's
I
right.
am peace. I am clear. I am free. Mm-hmm. I haven't found it and grabbed it.
It's not something you have to find. It's something you have to release the blocks to the presence of.
And she said, great. I want you to do an exercise. I want you to give yourself, write in a card that you've created this, like you've mm-hmm. become this, mm-hmm. and put each one of those in a box, tie a bow on it, and then open it up on Christmas morning to receive the gift that you're giving yourself.
So beautiful.
Right? So it was this beautiful ritual. And then she said, also, I want you to, Martha was in on this conversation as well, so we both did this. She said, also, what's the gift you want to give yourself next year? Mm-hmm. Like, let's plant the seed for what you want to step into, because this was a big year for you. You created these things, you became them. What's the gift for next year? And I thought about it for like a minute. I think I said one thing, and she was like, I'm not sure if that's what it is. And I was like, oh, okay, I know what it is. It's ultimate courage. It's ultimate courage for just everything that, now that I've created this foundation, it's like kind of stepping into more things, right? It's like, what have I been afraid of or maybe resistant to in the past, and now I'm going to step into with peace and with clarity and with freedom and not feeling afraid, right? And so I did that ritual and that practice. And then, the next week I was like, we should, I was telling Martha, I was like, I think we should move in together, which I would never do in the past. Mm-hmm. I never was like curious about that. I was kind of a resistant, waited as long as I could. So that was one thing. That happened in the first month. And then my father passed away, which was like this 17-year journey of kind of wondering how long he would last and all these different things from his accident. And I remember I did a session with my therapist maybe 2 days after he passed that was already planned on the schedule. And I was like, I wanted this, but I didn't know it was going to happen this quickly.
Right.
It's like, be careful what you want, because the universe, like you said, will bring you things to see if you're actually going to step into that, right? And like how you respond to it. I'm curious based on, and I feel like it's been a beautiful journey, sadness and grief, but also like awareness of the beauty from these experiences, right? My father passing mostly. I'm curious with what happened in your life, losing your child recently. What was that? How have you been able to practice and integrate the lessons you've learned through the journey of something you're just very sad to go through? A big loss for you and your family. Yeah.
Well, first I'll say that I think that having been through and come out the other side on so many different benchmarks throughout my journey gave me the felt sense and the energy of knowing that that's possible.
To get through it.
Correct.
It's just got to be.
Yeah. So just for the listener that's not aware, I was pregnant 3.5 months ago. I was 5.5 months pregnant 3 months ago. And I'd worked a year with IVF. And I say worked, it was work.
It was daily grind, right?
It's a lot. And I did 9 IVF treatments to get one healthy embryo. And we kept saying, all you need is one. All you need is one.
Oh my gosh.
And my son, Owen was his name, was in my body for 5.5 months until my 20-week scan, when I found out that he was still alive, but he was not growing because my placenta wasn't giving him what he needed. And so I had to do a DNE, which is an abortion pretty much, and have him. Yeah, I mean, that was horrific. Oh. And the days following Well, really, it was the lead up that was the most horrific, that I still have a lot of PTSD that I have
weight?
to work.
You mean the
Just
weight?
like carrying a baby in you that's alive. Yeah. And then once everything was complete and I went home to my 3-year-old, beautiful, amazing son, and I had my little kitten on the way, right? I was like in the hospital, like talking to the cat guy, being like, get me that cat now. And so I came home, and very quickly it was beautiful to witness all my work right there, all my personal growth work and spiritual work right there in place for me, like this soft pillow I landed into. And there was my IFS, and it was like, oh, okay. My girlfriends would be like, why aren't you feeling more things? Shouldn't you just be upset right now? And I was like, no, I have a dissociation part that's doing a beautiful job keeping me safe right now. Yeah. I don't want her to stay there forever, but right now she's doing a great, she's kicking. Okay. So I was checked out for a little bit, and then I would dip into it and check out and dip in, but I was aware of that. I didn't get stuck in that dissociation. And then there was this faith part that is so much stronger than my fear from 20 years of spiritual development. And I just know in my heart that this soul came to me in this way at this time to experience what it's like to be with me and my body, and to feel loved by me. And then that was enough for him. And I have faith that the soul will come back, or can come back in a different form, different than I expected. I've always believed that we have spirit babies, and our spirit babies choose to come into our life at the divine time for them and for us. And sometimes they come to teach us lessons, and sometimes they come to just experience the love in our system, or to experience what it's like to be in a body. Right. And then they want to go. And I'm glad that I could facilitate that for him. And I asked him for a sign, which was a blue butterfly, to show me he's around. And the first thing I saw when I walked in the door was Marta's phone screen is a blue butterfly.
Oh my gosh.
And there's blue butterflies all in my life everywhere. So that's,
my goodness.
Yeah, that's my sign for my son. And I do believe that an angel incarnated into my kitten, because that really helps. And having my profound child, Oliver, who's, holding me, which is just providing me with the most incredible opportunities every single day to just be the best version of myself for him.
Where do you feel like you're at in the process? Do you feel like you're,
Well, it was interesting. For decades, I've had this experience of counseling women and men, but particularly women, through this type of grief. And I realized when it happened to me,
like you would coach other people.
Yeah,
when they would have to abort it, they lose a baby.
Countless. Really? At least in one person in every audience. Women struggling to conceive, women struggling with fertility, but mainly miscarriage or loss or full-term loss. Just horrific stories. Two of my longtime coaching clients, two of them that were, I used to coach 16, 15 years ago, but two young women that I coached both lost babies full term. And so the first phone calls I made was to them. And I just was like, remind me what I said to you.
Oh, wow.
And the truth is that I really looked at the grief counseling that I had offered these women, even having not experienced it. And it was spiritual counseling, and said to myself, wow, this is what you've been training for. I knew it was true. I knew it worked, but I now was really living it. And it was really profound to just be the witness of how strong my faith is, and how strong my center is, and how I am so resilient and also so vulnerable too, and willing to just continue the journey of grief in its natural order, not force it.
Not forcing What's been the biggest lesson? It's only been a few months. It's still so recent, but what's been the biggest lesson for you with taking on the grieving process that you've been teaching for others, and just experiencing it all, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically? It's a big physical transformation, obviously.
Yeah, that was tough. That's tough, being 20 pounds overweight and not having your baby there, right? And some of it has been really understanding that a path through grief could look like titrating in and out of the feeling. so that you could be completely fine and normal and dissociated or just happy in the moment and then feel into it and then be doing great. And then I did a podcast the other day and a woman shared her story with me. It was just, but it was beautiful. And we were able to hold each other in that same experience and to just be able to dip in and dip out. But the biggest opportunity was for me to see how my faith is so much stronger than my disbelief. And my fear. I have such a strong certainty that this happened exactly as it was meant to, and that there's something else coming.
How do people get to that place though? That maybe haven't had the training or the coaching or the, how do they get to the place of certainty and a belief and not living in fear about anything, not just of like
it's really my life's work, truly. My book, The Universe Has Your Back, is Transform Fear to Faith. This whole book, Happy Days, is all about reclaiming that serenity that you were just speaking of. And I've always loved this quote from A Course in Miracles. I'm not here to teach you the meaning of love. I'm here to teach you how to release the blocks to the presence of love. And so we all have that core sense of self with a capital S. We have that love, that compassion, that courage in all of us. We just have built up so many walls against it. And the more we tap into books like this, listen to podcasts like yours, the more we go into therapy, the more we spend time in spiritual settings or in therapeutic processes, the closer we get to that presence of self within. And that's the answer. That is the straight up answer. That nothing outside of us is going to be the source of our safety or security or happiness or worthiness. It has to be something that is restored within ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a process. And that's literally why I wrote this book, because Louis, I care so much about this reader. I was having a call with my therapist and she's like, you're working so hard and you're back to back. And I said, I've never felt more on mission than I do right now. Because I think about how much suffering I've experienced in my life and how committed and courageous I've been to come through.
Yeah.
And I just want to be a powerful example for every human that wants to heal, to know that that's possible for them.
Wow.
And so if I spend 6 hours in the ISO booth recording podcasts, it's for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not about some credential. It's about making sure that whoever needs this is going to hear about it.
What do you think your life's going to be at a year from now, from all the things you're going to go through and the process of grieving and growth and learning and service? Where do you think it'll be? I guess, is tomorrow 2/2/2/2? Where will you be, I guess, a year from that date, you think?
2/22/23?
Yeah. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, where do you think you'll be?
So I guess I would say I'm just continuing to shine the crystals. So I would hope that the steadiness I feel now is just even more magnified, and my ability to witness my triggers and smoothly transition and take my little girl to the bedroom and cuddle with her just is faster and quicker. And that direct line access to self is stronger and just more and more developed. I want to continue to educate myself. I want to go further and potentially even see if I can get some credentials at some point.
Really?
Not really about the credentials, but just go do deeper training.
Therapeutic trainings. That's cool.
And just to really I definitely want to go as far as I can with all the IFS training. And most importantly, somebody said to me like, oh, okay, what's next for Gabby Bernstein? And I said, what's next is next week. I can't wait to see my book in the hands of all these people and just witness their transformations and see them have the experiences. And, so many people throughout my career have written to me and said, oh, this book changed my life, or this book changed my life. And I always say, no, I didn't change your life. The book didn't change. You changed your life. Like, I told you a story. You did the practice. You changed your life. And so I've always felt that so strongly. And now more than ever, I feel this sense of urgency that this is so necessary. This is like required curriculum to be living in the human condition, whether it's my book or somebody else, Bessel van der Kolk, or, your book, or whatever it is that you find that's your path to recovery of whatever that means to you. And I just what's next for Gabby Bernstein is right now, tomorrow, witnessing people hold the book in their hands.
Yeah. I'll never experience labor or childbirth or anything like that, but I'm curious, what has been a powerful spiritual practice for you since over the last 3 months? Are you able to have conversations with your child's soul? Is there something you hope other moms could do if they go through this experience that you really recommend it's been helpful for you? Because I don't know the statistics of miscarriages or things like that, but
they're insane. Like it's like 80% of people have some kind of miscarriage.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's, I don't know, do you feel like it's powerful to have a spiritual conversation with the child once the child is no longer physically there?
Yes.
Is it, because I'm not sure if moms do that or not, or if they just kind of like move on to the next.
Really depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes the safest thing for somebody to do is just move forward or get pregnant again. And that's totally understandable.
Are you having conversations?
Yeah. So I hear spirit guide. I have spirit guides, and we all do, I believe. And I can hear that presence and I can feel that guidance. And I also know that my guides work through people and friends. And I was right when I lost Owen, I had this immediate psychic knowing that there was another soul, that the same soul was coming back. And then, as I mentioned to you, it was like kind of really overly reiterated by every psychic in my life.
Sure.
And so that sense of knowing was so strong, and then it was really reinforced for me. And there's a path forward that doesn't require that much of my body, but it's a path forward to this child potentially coming through. And I wasn't really like taking the actions on it. Like I kind of took an action, like made a phone call to the doctor, and then just they're like, oh, he'll get back to you in January. They never got back to me. I was sort of just like hanging out. And then out of the blue, it's the same doctor that my friend used for her son with IVF. And ultimately she did a donor egg and now has this most incredible child ever with her husband. So she loves this doctor, and she just texted me out of the blue, and she said, listen, I just texted the doctor and asked him to fast track you forward. And I was just like, that is my baby in action.
Wow.
I was not sure. I was overwhelmed. I was feeling, should I do this? Do I want to do, like it was just a lot to go through. And so then God will do for you what you cannot do for yourself. And God works through people, and my spirit baby works through people. And he was like, Jamie, knock, 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 get this going.
Wow.
And she said, yeah, no, I know.
Wow. Well, one of my triggers is I laugh when things are really sad.
Yeah, no,
dark.
I do the same thing.
Like,
I do the same
not
thing.
Laughing at stuff. I'm just like, this is heavy stuff. But I think it's important for us to all look at it, because heavy things are going to happen to all of us. We're not getting out of here alive. No one's getting out alive.
Yeah.
Like there are things, just sad things are going to happen. And I think it's to prepare ourselves for staying peaceful.
That's a nice point, right? So it's like let's say you're not having an acute crisis. Someone with an acute crisis right now is like, that's my book. I want to read that book right now. Someone that's just like, like I'm doing some things I don't like to do. Read the book now, because
prepare yourself.
It's setting the foundation for a steadier system and the resilience. It's creating a life of resilience.
Absolutely.
So that no matter what you face, whatever it might be, you can really be present and move through things with grace.
Absolutely.
Grieve with grace, and the thing I really want to mention, Louis, is that while we talked about such deep stuff, and we only go to big talk here with you, and it may feel like, that's a lot. You can have a lot of fun along the way.
Right.
And you and I can both really speak to that. We've done the past 20 years, 25 years, we've been working on ourselves really diligently with a lot of devotion, but we've had a lot of fun along the way.
Absolutely.
And we've had so many miracles. And someone once said to me, how do I live a miraculous life? I just said, add up the miracle moments. And so all those miraculous moments of relief, when you add them up, become a life of relief.
Yeah. And here's what I want to ask a couple more things, and we'll finish up here in a second. If someone is not willing to face their trauma, can they truly live an abundant, manifesting life? If there's stored traumas,
good question.
There's defensive guards, or you're able to accomplish, accumulate, achieve, but still feel a lack of inner peace if you're not willing to do the deeper work.
That's correct.
So you can manifest and accomplish, but then it's still going to feel like something's missing inside.
Correct. And so you can manifest a lot, you can work your ass off and produce to a certain level, and you can attract a partner, but there won't be a sense of worthiness.
Still,
you won't believe you're worthy of what you attracted, or you won't be able to keep it, or you'll sabotage, or you'll keep looking for more. So it can never be, our happiness can never be something that we get. It has to be someone that we are.
Ooh, yeah. So up until 3 years ago, I guess, for you, because you were, #1 New York Times bestseller back to back to back, and building this massive business, and you've got a great, marriage and newborn son at the time. Did you feel like you were able to, and you were like the manifester, you're like the attraction manifester teacher, and you were doing it for yourself, but did you feel like something was still missing?
Well, I think that there is definitely periods in my early career where I was manifesting a lot, but I was holding it and manifesting it because career-wise, it was all in the pursuit of good. But these other parts of my life were just like totally falling apart.
Really?
So in my career, I always believed, and I always had complete full freedom because I knew I was on a mission.
You were on a mission based, yeah.
I was full service and love, and have continued to be. And so my career's never been, it's just, you think it and it will be. And that.
What parts of your life were kind of
I was dramatically struggling in my intimate relationships with friends, and my prior to my husband, but with my husband, and just relationships were a struggle. Not so much like he and I, but my ability to really enjoy what I had manifested.
Really?
Yeah. And even the struggle to conceive, and there's just a lot of things I wanted in my life that were not coming easily because there was more that I needed to heal.
You had some blocks or some traumas in that area, and so those things were more difficult to manifest.
And if they did manifest, they were. I believe that one and not be able to
of something.
do the inner work.
Yeah.
It's a book on how to feel good. And every single one of my books
Oh, I think is helpful. On the outside. Why? And I don't blame. I'm actually dating someone now. Happy days.
So when I was a kid, lights,
Happy
camera,
days.
action. Truly, truly happy.
The constant work. I think I remember a work then. This must have been 2010. There for me in a lot of ways, emotional. Constantly doing the work because found wisdom and grace when we go. What were those three truths?
Trust in of love.
Thank you so much. If you
get back into, and we have zero control.
We have to.
What does that mean?
Period. You're inspired, receptive, towards you what you desire. Back to that power growth first. Back, not go out, force anything, control. To go deep by what's unresolved. And show up for it. A baseline of feeling to return to who we are. I can further that too.
World, people on food. Sense of control. If we have we're still triggered by everything.
When we're triggered, because
Yes.
it's a way of staying. Of fear, ultimately. What reasons that for self-regulation, arousal, (2020) can show up for this. Or you can show up. I say show up for painful stuff. Show up. Whatever it is that you
Hump.
Mm-hmm.
Or
like activated unresolved part. Healed and I have no triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Structure and I was like, the exec structure through which we can
fully in their on how do you learn on a daily basis when that's been so
Schwartz, who I will introduce, is one of the most profound therapists. Is the part is whenever that of not being good enough or not being everything around me. So it's or to refers to as self and loving, caring.
absolutely, yeah.
Brought up to believe in, that one of my intentions witness people with compassion, people who are really in or people who have done harmful things with compassion, because I can see
When someone's being in Knives Out,
I love that. What is your gift? Because you just people.
yeah.
That start to do our own personal growth and for others.
Mm-hmm.
Offering. Wow. There.
Mm-hmm. Something that I've been working with a lot and other politics communication is about on social media. Judge this person for their belief and on judgment when what's happening, I feel more at peace. Angry, I fixate on a bone as opposed to thinking and thinking focus more on like right. I love your book from Judgments, and do you still with yourself the
I call Judgment Detox. It's based on the cover of a book with that title. Is this my opportunity? But this is why. Concern for others, the why, overarching care for. So I felt you tell someone the truth is to say it.
So how could you about your partner and a coworker?
That I'm wearing right now.
I love it.
I have no intention of whatever it is that you need to say with you so that I don't hold on to it. About this matter. And then speak about it. And then using I feel it makes me feel that I think and from a place of then trigger. So if I could do it over, I would have done it.
Most people are blocked from having what that they want internal peace. Is it is it their the main thing?
The above, but the unresolved to the future in every area. There may be some areas of your life where that energetic disturbance that is on repeat. The way out of that, the way to get unstuck is to change our internal nervous system, our belief systems, and all the energy that's wrapped up around that. That's not easy. Yeah, you're going to say, how do you do that?
Well, I mean, say someone listening is 30, 40, 50 years old and they've had a belief for that, for decades of their life. Is it as easy as being aware and conscious and the belief shifting in a moment, or do things really take a long time to shift a belief?
I think I believe in quantum shifts, but I do believe that quantum shifts often come with a lot of practice and recovery.
Yeah, it's like you spend years of working on it, and then all of a sudden it works.
It was funny. When I was talking to Dick Schwartz, the founder of IFS, I said to him, Dick, it feels like it's been 10 years of hard work for overnight relationship to self, And he's like, yeah, I've heard that before. Because that there was this, I had been in IFS therapy for 8 years. And then all of a sudden one day it clicked. I was like, oh my God, my internal resourced self can care for the controller and can care for the little girl and can really navigate the system internally and get those parts out of their extreme roles. And she can be so loving and compassionate. And she's not always going to be there, but she's going to be there more often than not. Holy crap. That was, 8 years in therapy doing IFS and then, 15 years of hardcore recovery.
Right.
So it isn't that, but here's the good news. We may not have that click aha moment overnight, but we have to recognize that every moment of relief along the way is a miracle. The more we add up those moments of relief, the more we live a miraculous life. So the idea that growth is hard and we have to do so much and it's so heavy, we can unpack that by really witnessing that we can have fun along the way.
Yeah.
You can celebrate the small wins. You can enjoy the moments of relief. You can even enjoy the process of personal growth, which sounds insane, but I do.
No, yesterday I felt like the last few months have been emotionally challenging, ups and downs. I haven't felt the sense of like stable emotions with certain people in my life. And I've been like, man, can I just have one day where it's not, wondering what's going to happen next. And yesterday was that day where I was like, man, this is a peaceful day. And even though I don't feel like I've had a lot of peace consistently for the last few months, I was like, I can really appreciate the full day. I can journal. I get to journal about this and reflect back like what was happening and how can I do that one more day?
Great.
How could I do that one more day in my life and not think about the rest of my life, but just today? What can I do to show up for myself, for peace, for my environment, for the people in my life, and continue to be in progress, like you said, and continue to work on it. And it's a beautiful thing when we can I guess, reflect on those moments and build the miracle over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's like build it over time, like you said. And is there an exercise or a process that you have about evaluating our beliefs and figuring out which ones truly support us and which ones are tearing us down? And then how to replace a belief that's been so ingrained in your psyche for so long?
I have a wonderful method from my book, Super Attractor, that I often say if it's the only method from the book that somebody applies, they can experience a miraculous shift from that alone. It's called the choose again method. And the first step is to notice the negative thoughts that you have on repeat and notice how they make you feel. So in the moment, if you can catch yourself, you can't always catch yourself, but if you start practicing this often enough, you'll get good at it. Notice, oh, there's that thought again. Oh my God. And how is it making me feel? Step one, making me feel tight in my chest. It's making me feel anxious. It's making me feel like I want to go punch the wall. It's making me feel XYZ. So you can even write it down. You can just think about it. Step two is really important. It's to forgive yourself for having the thought. When you forgive yourself for having that thought, what happens is that you no longer identify with it. You just see it as a thought that you keep thinking. You just see it, oh, there's that freaking thought again.
So it's not, this is my thought. This is a thought that I'm thinking in the moment. Yeah.
It's just that thought that I've thought again and again. There it is. There's that thought again. I'm not good enough. There's that thought again. I'm bad. There's that thought again. no one loves me. There's that thought again. I can't handle this. Oh, it's just there again, right? Just notice the thought. Oh, forgive the thought. Forgive yourself for having the thought. And what happened? Abraham Hicks says that a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. When you forgive yourself for having the thought, you no longer believe that that thought is you. You see it as a thought that you keep thinking. The third step is the fun part. That's when you can choose again, where you can reach for the next best feeling thought. So in the moment, you would reach for the next best feeling thought being something that you believe in. So I always use the example, if your thought is I'm broke, I don't want you to choose again with I'm a millionaire, because the ego part of you, the fear part of you is going to be like, yeah, freaking right. Nice try. Right. You want to reach for the thought of I have that job interview next week and I'm excited about it. I have LinkedIn, which is an incredible resource. I can reach out to that friend who knows so-and-so. I have the skill set that I am really proud of. I have this education behind me. I have this resume. Whatever it is that you can lean into, that you believe in, that empowers you, that makes you feel good. And once you start to get into a momentum with feeling better, you reach for more. You really get to say.
See, nature has got a natural agenda, is that you should grow up to be a self-regulated adult in connection with yourself and with other people. That's nature's agenda. It's like nature has an agenda for an acorn to become an oak tree. But an acorn doesn't spontaneously become an oak tree. It has to have the right conditions.